My name is Jeremy Ross. I'm the soybean agronomist for the University of Arkansas Systems Division of Agriculture. Robb Dedman is a consultant in Southeast Arkansas, and Robb's been working with one of our producers, Matt Miles and Lane Miles, for the last several years, and they're some of the ones that have really kind of been hitting some home runs on some soybean yields. And Robb's just going to kind of run through some of their production practices, and some of the things they've been working on the last several years on increasing some of their yields. And then if we got time, usually this meeting, I usually try to give, the farmer, the consultant, a lion's share of the time, because that's what, a lot of the farmers and consultants want to hear from is the actual people out and putting, all of our research to the actual good. And then, like I said, I've kind of got a summary of the last several years on the Grow for the Green Yield Contest that we're seeing some interesting trends. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up, let Robb kind of start his portion of the talk. But anytime during the talk, if you have a question, ask it. We'll try to make sure we stay on time. We've got 45 minutes to get through this. And so, again, anybody needs a CEU sheet, it's in the back, and you can sign it. So, Robb?
We'll keep this pretty painless. I'll try to be pretty quick. They asked me to talk about some of our successes and some of the things that we do with the soybean in Southeast Arkansas, and how we're kind of maintaining the yields and achieving the yields that we're getting to. So I just kind of thought about this. I thought, with declining soybean prices, they're not quite as attractive as they have been, especially, like 12, 13, 14, we had those really high prices. So, the question is, can we keep them profitable where we can keep them in the rotation? Ways that we look at to increase our yields. There's a lot of different things, not really going to sit here and make recommendations. I'm just going to kind of throw out some thoughts. I want to keep it interactive. Anytime anybody's got a question, yell, scream, holler. Jeremy, if you got ideas, throw them out there. But let's talk about, starting this thing off. We'll start off at the beginning and work to the end here. But fertility and the timing of your fertility. A lot of times when we're farming and growing these soybeans, we'll go out there and put a lot of girls you'll see them go out there and put a, 03060 or 06090 or something. They'll go out there and put it out in the fall before and call it good. And I've kind of got a little different thought on that, and it probably is a little argumentative with a lot of other people. But you take a big fella, and he likes to stay really big, and you feed him this fall, he's going to be pretty hungry by next fall, in my opinion. So I kind of look at, that goes into the timing aspect of that. I look at a lot of these growth curves and that are put out here by some of these different universities, and the fertilizer use growth curves. And I look at sulfur, and we look at potash, and we look at all those major nutrients, zinc, and try to time some of this fertility to where it'll be available to that plant when it needs it. And that way we know, in Southeast Arkansas, we have some pretty low CEC soils. So I'm pretty confident we're getting quite a bit of movement of nutrients, whether they're vertical, whether there's some lateral movement because of watering and stuff. We get some pretty heavy rains in the springs and stuff. So, put it out there when it needs it, is my thoughts. Is that going to cost you some extra trips to the field? Yeah, we don't go to the point of being crazy about it, but, put some of that potash out there about the time those beans are going to get ready to start blooming, and have it right there when it needs it. Move on to varieties and planting techniques. When does, we got to talk about varieties and planting. Then we're going to talk about weed control and reducing the stresses and get down into irrigation. And we're going to talk about these moistures. Get them cut right. Don't cut them at 6%. We're leaving weight in the field, and we're going to be timely. Kind of got ahead of myself on the fertility here, but let's talk about the soil test. There's some talks this week. They're going to be talking about whether grid sample or kind of what you like. I like the grid sample. and there's a lot of arguments there, and there's a lot of retailers and stuff. They like to pull a Varus rig and they like the zone sample, and I say I can find with a grid on a 2-acre grid that we do, I can find variances within a zone. They get good results. I was listening to a talk before lunch with Lance Rantham and Dr. Espinoza, and they were talking about the quality of your soil samples. You know, make sure you get good soil samples and get good quality results back. You know, we talked there for about the fertilizer, and then we'll talk about tissue testing, and it seems like that may be a new trend. Is it a trend? Is it a fad? I don't know. It's a tool. That's what I think. We'll do some tissue testing on various fields throughout the year. We'll pick a couple of fields that we will tissue test religiously every week, just to monitor levels and kind of watch what that plant's doing, and whether that's a good thing or not. You know, we don't react on every deficiency that we see. You know, if we're drilling along there and it shows that it's starting to decline in potash, we may not necessarily act on that. A good example is we did some cotton last year, and 1 week it showed that it was extremely deficient in sulfur. And we thought, you know, we was getting ready to make this really huge sulfur application. It was going to be expensive. It was going to be $12, $13 an acre in order to find a source that we could get out there and do anything with. And by the time we got everything rounded up, it was time to do it again. We said, let's just see what this week holds. And they came back, they were fine. So by not getting out of control and acting on that sample, that 1 week sample there, we didn't spend that money. So, you know, I said they're not the gospel. That's what I'm talking about there. Foliar fertilizers. Everybody's got their own opinion. Don't get hung up on them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're all snake oils. I'm going to tell you there are products out there that they can cure certain ailments. To me, foliars is not a way to fertilize a crop. You know, God made a plant to eat through the roots, not through the leaves. The leaves are for absorbing sunlight and, you know, converting starches to sugars. Start strong. When did the 2019 crop start for everybody? You know, for us, it started the day the combine went out of the field. We started looking at yield data, seeing how everything did, what varieties performed, what didn't perform, what varieties failed to the nematodes worse than others. You know, so we're starting doing that homework, and you know, then with the way seed and everything is now, and with discounts and all that, before Christmas, we're making decisions on what we're going to do for this year and getting that seed ball. So you got to start the day the combine comes out of the field. Pick that variety. Pick that one that works on your farm. The planting system that works for you, and you know, that's why I'm saying this works for you. I'm not going to say what works for us is going to work for you. You know, there's so many different options out there. There's twin 38s or single 38s. There's single 30s. I've done some work with some twin 30s. Then there's the 20s, the 22s. You know, it's endless. Whatever configuration a person can come up with, what works for your system. You know, find which one performs best. Do test it. You know, test this compared to this, and see if you can find something that'll give you a bump. On Matt and Lane's farm, twin 38s is what fits. I mean, we're outperforming every year. Quality planting equipment. You got to, those planters that, you know, you can't pull them out of the shed. We all know that. You can't just pull them out of the shed and go. These beans they're $60, $70 a bag now. It's not just throwing some old hutches out there on the ground and going. I mean, we need to conserve our dollar everywhere we can on these cheap soybeans that we've got. And then we got to be sure to get that stand established. You know, so that goes back to seedbed preparation. You know, I tell people these aren't your grandpa's soybeans anymore that we're trying to raise. We're shooting for the moon. You know, reduce stresses on the plant. We got, you know, here's some different things, you know, different types of stresses that we can talk about. You know, stress is going to equal loss of pods. anytime you put a stress on a plant, you burn it with a chemical, it's gonna abort pods, or it's gonna abort plants. You, let the weeds eat it up, it's gonna abort. Pods are going. Let it go dry, it's gonna die. Diseases will eat them up. Just so, all those stresses, get rid of them. I mean, there's zero tolerance. If we're going to get these yields that we're looking at, there's no tolerance whatsoever. Weed control, we can all know the problems with palmer amaranth and ALS resistance. We can sit here and talk about that all day. We all know problems with dicamba. We can talk about that all day. But find that technology that works on your farm. Whether it's Liberty-Link, whether it's Roundup Ready, you can still make that work with a little Rogan. Whether you got to use a Duo Enlist or whatever. A lot of the technology I think is going to be involved to get us through this palmer issue is going to require some elbow grease. It's going to require some holes. Get out there and get them out of the field. Don't let them go to seed. There it goes back. Zero tolerance on pig weeds. I pull up to a soybean field and I can tell those guys, I can say, hey, we've got pig weeds out here, or, there's pig weeds down on the bottom of this field or something. And shortly after lunch or something, you'll go back by there and there'll be half their crew out there, and they'll be chopping and pulling and hauling them away in pickup trucks. And so it's a proactive approach. Overlap the residuals. I had an old weed scientist come in one time, and probably everybody's heard it. The easiest weed for us to control is that weed that we never see. So if we don't let them ever come up, we can keep them in the ground. That's what we want to do. Find a post-emerge product that you can make work. That's pretty limiting for most of us. Some of us can still use some of the PPO products. Some of us can't. Some of us have to go use Liberty. But find something, get them killed. I saw a guy a couple of years ago, had his guys out there with, 3-gallon sprayers, and they were just kind of spot spraying with Gramoxone, just trying to keep these things at bay. So keep those fields clean and reduce that stress. Irrigation, start on time. I think it was the second or third year I worked for Matt, and I thought I was cocky and everything, and I didn't realize that he was cockier than me. But I pulled up to a field, and I was trying to think, I think it's actually that field right there. But anyway, it got dry. It was, the ground started cracking and all, and these beans were about V4, and they were getting ready to start blooming and everything. And I told him, I said, Matt, if anybody knows him, he's really easy to get jacked up. And I told him, I said, man, these beans are dry, they're getting ready to bloom. We got to get them watered. He said, well, when do they need to be watered by? I said, man, they really need to be watered by probably no later than we get started by Saturday. Friday at 11 o'clock that Friday, he sent me a picture of the water was running. So, start on time. That's that key to that. And don't let those plants get too thirsty. But, and that being said, don't overwater them. We've got the farm set up on pipe planter. It has been a blessing, probably, you could say. What do you think, Lane? Do you think, how much have we saved on time, on watering time? How many sets did we cut out and got rid of?
Probably at least get rid of 1 to 2 sets.
So 25%. We reduced watering time by 25%, you could say. It's keep good records on that. These guys, they'll come in here. Does this got a corner on it, Jerry?
It does.
Is that the green?
Yep.
They'll come in here and they take these paper maps, and then they'll draw each set on there. And then as we water throughout the year, they'll come in there and make notes on them. This whole size got out a little too quick. Let's back it off next year. And they'll update them each year. And when they get ready to go to the field, they get these notebooks out and make a copy of the map, stick them in these page savers, and hand them to the people that's going to be doing it. And so it's, and they're updating them every year. And and just, that's paying attention to that detail that we were talking about. And that goes back to also that starting on time, is that being timely we talked about there. So, you know, everybody, if you haven't used pipe planter, use it, try it. You'll like it. Getting water off is important, getting water on. I hear so many people always talk about, my fields flood out, I get flooded out, I get flooded out. I can't grow beds because I get flooded out. And the first thing you do is you go and you look, and you know, you make people mad because you say, man, you don't have a flooding problem, you got a drainage problem. Best thing you can do is go hire a track hoe and put a ditch down here, get rid of this water. You don't have anywhere for it to go. So, you know, that flooding out issue is not a flooding issue, it's a drainage issue. There's some old fish ponds we got. And landlord didn't have enough pipes in to get the water out of there fast enough. And one of the first years when we really started doing accurate yield mapping, first thing we noticed on them ponds was how much lower the bottoms were. You know, tops would be 75 and 80 bushels, bottoms would be 30. And you draw off and you calculate that acreage and you'll find out 20% of your field was 30 bushel acre. I mean, that's not gonna, you're not gonna stay in business doing that. But took that to the landlord, took those yield maps to the landlord. It wasn't but a few days, Traco was out there and they were sticking pipes in everywhere you could go. The next year after though, that beans was back on them fields, and now they're 80 bushel top of the bottom. It don't matter where you go, they're totally uniform on there. So did it make a difference? Yeah, it made 50 bushel acre on 30% of the field. So that's money in your pocket. Real easy to get landlords to do things like that whenever you can show them. Disease management, that's a pretty easy one to talk about. One thing that we look at is we find varieties that have good disease packages right out the gate. Don't really want varieties that are going to have a lot of frog eye susceptibility. That's a major disease for us. And so we're looking for that resistance. And then, you know, if you've got the resistance, you may see a lesion or two, you know, so manage the stress with resistance if you can. Do you spray a fungicide? A lot of people don't. We do. Make sure that you control the diseases. When you spray for them, control them. Spray early, spray late, whatever you need to do there. You know, we like that R2 to R3 application for plant health. And you know, I've heard people say, man, that's a joke. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna give one recommendation in here. If you haven't used Preaxor at R2 and R3, use it. You'll have healthier soybeans. They will be healthier. I always thought it was a joke. It's real, and I like it. I contribute that probably to one of our, that's probably the biggest, maybe not the single biggest, but it's big in my opinion on getting those yields. Manage the nematodes. It's getting harder and harder every year. We don't have enough mid-group 4 indeterminate resistant varieties out there to choose from. We've got a couple. I feel like we're hitting the top end of the yield spectrum on those varieties, and it is what it is. I mean, without them, you go from 75 bushels to 20 bushels really quick without those varieties. And, you know, so that's how we're reducing those stresses. Insects. We all know what to do here. I feel like, and we know, we've all seen Dr. Lorenz's work, where as the economic value of the crop goes up, thresholds go down on the insects. I feel like you got to throw the numbers out as a consultant. We do have to try to maintain a level of profitability with each crop. But we've got to control these insects. And if I'm working toward an 80 bushel average crop, then I'm tending to drop that threshold back. You know, if they say 9 stink bugs per 25 sweeps or whatever, then I'm probably going to drop it back to 8. And the reason I am, because by the time that you get the chemicals lined up, you get the weather right, and you get everything cold, you know, to make that application, it's probably gonna be at 9. So let's get it. And you know, they don't wanna see the damage. They don't wanna see the peck on the beans. They don't wanna see ate up pods by worms. They don't wanna see it. I mean, it's, so, best thing to do is get rid of it. Do experiments on your farm. Put in your own variety trials. A lot of companies will come put trials on your farms. We do that, but we also sit down and we do our own trials. We'll invite seed companies to, you know, give us your 2 to 3 varieties that you want to put in there, and here's how big your plot's going to be. Most of these plots will be 12-row plots. You know, here's what we need, and they like to participate, and then they turn around and you give them the data back, and they like that. Try multiple varieties on the same type of dirt. You know, we'll try to make notes on, you know, did an Astro bean, even though it doesn't have nematode resistance, how did it fare versus this Pioneer bean? It didn't have nematode resistance in the same type of environment. And we'll try to look for that. But look at different fertility products. You know, different timings of fertility. What works? Can you make that mid-season or that bloom application, that early R1 application of phosphorus? Can you make that show you some yield increase? So try those different things, and you know, it's you don't have to be scientific about it. Go out there and put you in a plot, put you in a check, cut it with combine, read it off the yield monitor. You got it. There's your data. Look at your different planting practices. We talked about that. Twins versus singles. Different. You know, if you can play with different widths. We you know, we look at a lot of different things like that. Look at different ways to irrigate. You know, try a pipe planter. Does your work better? Does it work better? Try, look at surge valves. Do you need to be surge irrigating? You know, just look at all sorts, however you want to do it. Use moisture sensors, you know, they help. Sometimes they might, sometimes they don't. Was in a meeting, I saw a case of where the moisture sensor was, you know, saying we're good on moisture. The ground was starting to crack. It took them 4 days to get it out. Even though the moisture was there, it still took a long time water to get those plays. So, takes common sense along with some of this technology too, and we all know that. And record your data. You know, that's important. As you record this data, go back to it, and it can be as fancy as putting in an iPad, on spreadsheets, or some of this software that's out here for farmers to use, to as simple as a notebook. I've got one really progressive grower that I work with that has a spiral notebook. He keeps it in the door pocket of his truck, and there is not a thing that happens on his farm that he does not record in that diary. And we can go back and we can look through that notebook each year if we've got a question. You know, and we made an observation here. We looked the other day, and he wanted to know how timing of, you know, when we started planting. And we went back 5 years. And we realized in 5 years that we started planting within 6 days of the start time over the 5 years. So, I mean, pretty much we know that it was happening all at the same time. So that's how we use that data. You know, did this chemical work good last year? You know, there's a big section in there this year about loin. We got a lot of data about that. But and then network and communicate with others. You know, share ideas amongst each other. We're all each other's allies. There's not many farmers in this world, and there's a lot of people that are coming against us. So we got to stick together. We got to work together to stay here. So get with people. You know, we got a little group. We go to South Dakota, and there's a little yield contest up there on Hefty Farms, and they invite growers from around the country to participate. And we've gone up there and played with those guys, and we've had pretty good success up there. And they've got, and I'll go and throw a little pitch for them. They've got a field day coming up in February 15th, or is it 25th?
25th.
25th. And Brinkley. So, go over and see what they got to say. There's some good data going to be presented there. And Perry can give you some information on it if you're interested. But good group to work with. And the key to take away from here is be timely. If you're late, it ain't going to work. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, you're left. Be early, be right there at it. So, if you got any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions for Rob while we switch presentation?
Y'all got that.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. So, just to kind of wrap up and finish our last 15 minutes or so. So we've had a yield contest in Arkansas for, well, I guess since 1999, and been trying to use some data and kind of mine some of the data the last several years. Funded by the Soybean Promotion Board, and this contest is administered by the association. So I mentioned we started back in 1999. Prior to 2007, it was mainly just prizes from implement dealers and seed companies and things like that that sponsored some of the contests. But we changed a little bit in 2007. We added the Grow for the Green yield contest, and in addition, we did the Race for 100. So at that point, back in those days, Kip Color was busting some pretty good yields up in Missouri. We had several of our growers and promotion board members say, why can't we do that here in Arkansas? So we started that particular program in 2007. It took a few years before we finally reached that mark, but then once we did, man, the floodgates was pretty much wide open. A few changes throughout the program. In 2011, we decided to kind of look at production systems. Prior to that, it was just kind of an open, the whole state was, it really didn't matter what technology or planting date or anything like that. And so, it was pretty much wide open for the state up until 2011. 2011, we decided to kind of break it up and look at, early season, full season, double crop. And we did that for about 2 years, and really didn't, it really wasn't flowing as well as we thought. And then in 2013, we actually divided the state up into geographical regions, and I'll show, kind of the split on that in a little bit. Kind of the field criteria, of course, we wanted some minimum and maximum acreage. Minimum of 5 acres, because we thought that was what we could, if you were getting in that 100 bushel mark, you could put that on a single truckload without having to look at multiple trucks. And so we were trying to do it as easy as possible. Of course, limited to 1 producer per division and 1 field, straight angles and right angles on the field measurements. And then, we've had to have the competition fields within production in soybeans the last 3 years. When we look at the yield contest rules, we had to, set minimum federal grain standards, and that was pretty difficult this past year. We do a dock for moisture above 13% and any foreign matter. We have to have judges, and we rely on our county agent system to do that. We've got several that spend, quite a bit of time over and above their normal work day, going out and working with growers and actually looking at these fields and helping do the harvest at the end. And it takes at least a minimum of a half a day to do one of these, because you got to go out, cut the field, measure it off, and then the judges actually have to go to where the truck is being weighed and observe the actual weight and everything. So this is I commend our county agents and appreciate all their support and help on this. Again, we have to have 3 of those presenters or judges there, and then we usually retain a 1 pound grain sample just to kind of look at quality issues. The awards, we have 3 different places for each division. In 2013, we had a $50,000 prize for the first person that broke that 100 bushel mark, and we actually had 3 producers in 2013 that reached that mark, so they split that money. In addition to that, so we've got built in any new additional winners, there's a $5,000 bounty, I guess. And so, if we have multiple winners, from here on out that break 100, they'll split that $5,000 mark. The overall winner for the state receives an additional $10,000. And then just in the last few years, we've implemented, we broke the 100 bushel mark, and several people were asking, what's the next level? And so we said, maybe we can hit 120 by 2020. And then we've got the first person to break the 120 bushel mark will receive an additional $10,000, or if there's multiple winners, they'll have to split that. But we've been really close on 120, and I'll show some of that data in a little bit. But I think we're really close. But it took us a few years to kind of break that 100 bushel mark. But I think we're really getting close to that 120 mark. The entry form is submitted prior, about I think August the 1st is when it's usually submitted, and it's just general information, general rules, things like that. We have to tweak the rules every once in a while because we'll see something that doesn't quite jive with what we're intending for this project to look at. But overall, I mean, they're pretty much basic rules on any other yield contest. As I mentioned, in 2013, we divided the state kind of up into divisions, and this way we were kind of really wanting more neighbor competition versus someone in the southern corner of the state being in competition with somebody in the northeast corner of the state, because in a little bit I'll show kind of where the 100 bushel mark guys have been coming from. A large chunk of them have been coming down in the southeastern corner of the state. Really doesn't surprise me because they can get planted several weeks earlier than the producers in the northeast. Conditions are a little bit different. You wouldn't think 250-mile difference in distance, you'd see that much difference in environmental conditions. But there is some environmental conditions that are a little bit different, and so you can see the 7 divisions in the state. We also have an 8th that's a conventional division. That's the entire state that we still have several producers enter every year. But you can kind of see we kind of looked at soil maps, geographic areas, and trying to get counties that were similar versus something that wasn't similar. And so you can kind of see the divisions that we have currently. If you look at the yields, comparing the state average versus the average for the Grow for the Green, pretty much mimics, if you look at the peaks and valleys on the environmental conditions, the yields for the state along with the yields for the Grow for the Green kind of ebb and flow. But if you look, we've had tremendous average yields in the Grow for the Green. Had a pretty good dip when we had some adverse conditions, I think about 2010, 2011. But you can see, we're continuing to trend up. So every year we're increasing our average yield with the Grow for the Green and the yield or the state average. So there's a lot of data we pull. Pretty much every production practice that all these producers do, they provide that. And so we've got a bunch of spreadsheets looking at this. And due to time, I just didn't want to really throw out everything that producers are looking at. But just kind of want to look at trends, So we got the year, the number of participants, the average yield, the average planting date, and this is the one that has probably been the biggest switch or change, from the inception of the Grow for or the Yield Challenge up until the last few years. Average number of irrigations, and most everything is furrow irrigated. We will have some pivots. I didn't include that data because you start looking at number of times, typically a pivot's used, a number, several more spins than you are with furrow irrigation. And so all of these numbers that you're looking at is just the furrow irrigated averages. And then just kind of pulled out the insecticide and fungicide applications. And so you can see, pretty good numbers back in, 1999, early 2000s. you know, if a producer was up in that, you know, low 60s to the 70 bushel mark, that was pretty good for back in the day. But you can see, you know, early May was typically our early planting, and on average, looking at the yield contest back when we first started, and we still used insecticide, fungicides, probably not as much as we do in the current competition. 2007, when the Grow for the Green and the Hunt Race for 100 was implemented, and so you can see we started picking up a number of, you know, entries, you know, started to increase just because of the interest in that. So this is 2009 to 2012. Again, in 11 and 12, we broke it out by early season, full season, and double crop. You can see that the early season averages were quite a bit better than the full season and the double crop, which was, you know, in line with what a lot of our research is showing. Earlier planting is going to have higher yield potential. If you look at the early season, we're starting to see more of that early April planting, and then the May, you know, early May for the full season, and then our double crop again is going to be that end of May, 1st of June. As you go through, you know, early season, full season, we are seeing, you know, variability in the number of irrigations, and I think that's just, again, kind of reflective on what the environmental conditions are for that particular year. So looking at the last 6 years or so, 2013 is when we actually had, you know, we broke that 100 bushel mark. The number of entries is significantly increased. You can see the average yields have increased quite a bit compared to when we first started the competition. But the one thing that, you know, really surprises me, you know, we're in that more mid-April to mid-May planting versus that, you know, second week of our April planting, versus looking at when we first started that, you know, 1st of May, you know, first or second week of May. So even our Grow for the Green and our 100 bushel guys are really pushing that early season planting and trying to maximize yield.
Can you break out planting date by geography? What I mean is that loaded with southeast Arkansas, we're heavy rice rotation northeast, and the ground's nothing's burned. It's going to be hard to get an April rice planting.
Right. No. So we've got that data, and I can break that out. It's going to vary probably a 2-week period, and so you're looking at southern part of the state is going to be 1st of April, and then as you get further north, it's probably going to be that second, third, more likely that 3rd week of April planting date. But these are averages, and so you've got, you know, planting dates on either side of that. Most of the earlier stuff is going to be in the southeast. Most of the later stuff is going to be in the northeast. Probably the biggest thing on the pesticide, the number of fungicides, you know, practically 2/3, if not more, of the contestants use at least one fungicide application, some multiple. The insecticide is really geared toward the year. If we have a buggy year, we're going to have greater insecticide applications. I think that's reflected in 2018. We didn't really have that much of a, you know, we had some pockets, you know, of insects, but overall, you know, we really didn't see a whole lot of, well, you know, not quite half of the contest did an insecticide application this past year. So we're looking at the Grow for the Race for 100 winners. I've kind of got them broken out by years. If they've got a colored, their name is colored, that means they've multiple year winners. Matt Miles holds the record for having the most number of years that he broke the 100 bushel mark. I've got the variety, the average planting date, seeding rate. We've actually decreased our seeding rate when we first started. You know, a lot of guys were up in that 170, 150, 180, 200 range. If you look at the next couple of slides, we've actually in that, you know, probably around that more like that 140. So we've actually shaved off quite a bit on our seeding rates over the last several years. Probably the biggest thing, and this really kind of falls in line with a lot of our research, is narrowing up our row spacing. You know, a lot of people say, well, you say 38 twins, that's still on wide rows, but you're taking that single 38 and pulling it out, you know, to 7.5, 8-inch spacings, you know, on those 38-inch beds. And so, you know, I think if you look at the trend, there's a lot of 38 twin production in our Grow for the Green. And you can see the yields, you know, the first 3 years when we broke it, again, we had 3, Matt Miles, Eddie Tackett, and Nelson Crow. And then 2014, we had 3 additional. Again, Matt hit it for the second year. 2015, Matt hit again for the 3rd year in a row. 2016, had a number of winners. This was 2016. It was probably the best year soybean wise we probably ever seen in the state. James Ray almost hit that 100 bushel or that 120 bushel mark. Without the discounts, he did have over 100 bushels, but then when you factor in moisture and the foreign matter discounts, it dropped him down below that 120 bushel mark. But you can see started picking up a few extend varieties in 2016, 2017, and then we had several more winners. Probably the largest number of 100 bushel entries that we saw. Several, again, extend varieties, just straight Roundup Ready varieties. But you can see the populations, the rays were able to achieve, really good high yields somewhere around that 125 seeding rate. So again, we're starting to see a trend on fewer seeds planted and still maintaining our yields.
Is there a yield bump for that production?
A yield bump compared
Just a
to
cost reduction or a yield bump? Which one are we talking about?
Well, if you just look at a lot of our data, somewhere around 125 is going to be where you're going to start to maximize yield, but anything over and above that, you're not going to see statistically higher yields. But if you start factoring in seed cost, 120 versus 180, you're going to see some savings there. But I don't think that the yield difference is not going to be enough to pay for that increase in seed cost. And then one winter this past year, we probably had fewer, the numbers were reduced this past year. We had a couple of rule changes that, we won't get into that, but, I think our numbers were down, and then we just had, one individual that won it this past year. So this kind of breaks down where in the regions that the winners have been. Again, a majority have been in that southeast delta. And if you look at back prior winners, that's been the lion's share of where a lot of our guys, and I think a lot of it is due to planting dates. The southeast corner of the state can get, conditions more suitable for planting earlier than, say, northeast Arkansas. So, we've had 11 100 bushel winners from there. 1 from the east central delta along the Mississippi River, 2 from central there in that Grand Prairie region. Eddie Tackett was the only one from the western side of the state. He was, he did it back in 2017, and we really haven't had anyone else from that side of the state. And then 5 from the White River Basin, and this is up in Woodruff County and Independence County, and then 5 again from that northeast delta. So, yield trends for the state average and grow for the green are similar across years. We see those fluctuations, but we're seeing quite a bit more increase in yields with the grow for the green just because a lot of guys are really maintaining those yields. The one thing that really kind of pleased me is if you look at all these production practices, on majority of what we're looking at, most everybody's using recommendations from the university. Now that's just not to say that things are getting tweaked and fertility may be a little bit higher, varieties change and foliar feeds and things like that. But if you just kind of look at all the production practices, they're pretty much in line with our recommendations. Irrigations fluctuate from year to year, weather dependent, but I think we're becoming a little bit better managers, especially with some of the new tools we've got coming out on the soil sensors and pipe planter and things like that. We have seen an increase in insecticide, fungicide applications. Really on the fungicide applications over the last several years, I think a lot of those are going out for that plant health benefits. As Rob mentioned, sometimes you see some benefits with that, sometimes you don't. I think a lot of it goes back to what kind of variety you have and what kind of defensive package, what kind of disease package it has in those varieties. A lot of our winners are on twin row systems, even though, they're 38s. A lot of people consider that a wide row as a 38 twin. So I can actually consider that a narrow row spacing versus a single 38. Majority, if you look at the rotation, a lot of corn the last several years, so it's been a corn, soybean, corn, or a corn, rice, soybean, or some kind of rotation like that. but majority is following corn, which is, kind of like the Midwest system. A few that do follow rice, and then there's a handful that are soybeans behind soybeans, and we really don't recommend seeing soybeans behind soybeans just because of some disease issues and weed problems. But there are some situations where we're seeing some really good yields with soybeans behind soybeans. If you look at the soil texture, 99% of them are grown on silt loam. We do have a few on our clay soil textures, but majority of the Race for 100 and the higher yielding guys are coming off those silt loams. And we are working on the economics, because one of the main focuses on this was looking at production practices, and then are these economical? And so we're trying to work with the economists and trying to put some of those information together to try to get into a publication that is showing. Because, if it's not economical and you're not, increasing your yield enough to pay for those extra costs, then, there's really no benefit, in the long run seeing that. We're not going to see any more money back into our pocket. And, we've proven over the last couple of years with some of our research, especially our kitchen sink study, we can pour just about anything we can think of on a crop, and we may see a slight increases in yield. But when you run the numbers on all those extra inputs, you're looking at spending the extra $140, but you're only getting in return $30. Because you're only seeing slight increases in yield, and in the long run, that you're spending 140 to make 30. In my redneck math, that comes up to you're actually losing money. So. I appreciate the time. Again, there's some of the 2018 results in the back if you're wanting to have those. Pick them up. I don't want to take them home. And then CEU sign-up sheets in the back as well for those of you that came in a little bit later on that. But any questions, comments, I'll be glad to try to answer those. But I think we're out of time. We're right on time. That's perfect. So appreciate it.